how all of these things culminate to have an impact and an influence on us. So presently, as in the past, unfortunately, when we look at social class and look at that culture of poverty in many instances, we see a disproportionate amount of crime and deviance that occur there. And it appears to be just a part of the fabric of the mere environment in which people are living in that causes this notion of deviant behavior that people will then get involved with the law. Now, when we think in terms of juvenile delinquency, we're thinking in terms of actually youth, leading through the teenage years to 18 years old as it's characterized at the highest point. And as you may very well know, in many jurisdictions with laws dependent upon the crime, they might be charged as an adult. But usually with certain types of illegal types of activities, juveniles are 18 years and older, just to give us some parameter as to when we are talking about juvenile delinquency. What I would like to get into today is think in terms of that primary social unit within the social system of the family. And when we think historically of the African American family, in many instances, we think of the extended African American family. For those who are listening, the nuclear family is always a husband and wife. That extended family consists of grandma, grandpa, great-grandpa, the auntie, aunt, cousins. And many, I think, would agree that within the African American community, we have what is referred to as fictive kin. That means some uncle to Aunt Marie or Uncle Mac that really was not blood kin at all, but you would have always referred to them as that. And in that community, they would highly regard it. And so I think this is one of the breakdowns of this extended family that was very prevalent, say in the 60s, 70s, even earlier. But then it started to break down in the 80s. I worked with Dr. Andrew Billingsley that has the classic book on the African American family. And he started to looking at ramifications of the breakdown of that extended family. And as that started, we saw more deviance that started to occur within the city. And then we might be able to make some strong distinction between rural families and urban families. We have a tendency to see a clear difference between urban, if you look at this, at places like the south side of Chicago or Harlem or Compton, you see a higher level of deviance that might occur among. But now in growing areas such as Nashville, Tennessee, this is how you pose that question.
That's right. Or something like that.
That's right.
Very good. And of course, what we'll do, Dr. Sanford, we'll take this first commercial break, and then we'll come back and have the second segment. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. EKSanford, and he's talking about the breakdown of the African American family and juvenile delinquency. And Doctor, as I indicated earlier, this is some information that we need, especially from a sociological point of view, to have a real understanding as to what is going on with many of our young people today. So continue.
Yes. So as we broke on the last segment, we were looking at rural-urban differences. And as we can see, as we grow into patterns of more urbanism, you have a tendency to see a much higher crime rate among juvenile delinquencies, as well as other crime rates, but today's topic is on juvenile delinquency. I'm always, when I come to this program, try to share a historical backdrop in looking at the current problems that we have today. So to sum that up very briefly, it's hard not to talk about or to introduce 244 years of enslavement that occurred within the social structure, the very fabric of the American society. that led into the Civil War. And then after that, certain laws that brought about the abolition of slavery, that brought about the constitutional right for people to have the right to vote. And then from that time, Jim Crow laws emerged that still made things very unfair. So when you think about culture and think about the family and the breakup of it from those hundreds of years of enslavement that then led through the worst of after the Civil War into Reconstruction, the unfairness of 1896 Plessy versus Ferguson that made school systems, the institution of education, separate, but we all know that it was unequal. And then as time went on to the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education, where that school segregation was broken down to having desegregation. And there's always this intellectual conversation about the difference between something being desegregated and something being integrated. And I think we could argue that they moved into desegregation, but even today, possibly not true integration. So given that breakdown of the family from that earlier time period into the 50s and the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we started to see that there was a vibrant African-American family that helped from slavery to that time period. But then there was this breakdown with, say, the Great Migration, people moving north, leaving homes in the South. Then after they were living in that particular area, you found that urbanism started to take place. People became a little bit more disenchanted of holding the family connection together. And that's when that breakdown of the extended family. Before the break, I talked about Dr. Andrew Billingsley, and there are many other scholars that look at family and family units as being so important in the socialization process of a child from birth as they develop into elementary school, junior high, and high school. And with that breakdown, many will look for some type of attention, will look for love, will look for a way of having security and get involved in gangs, get involved in deviant behavior that might lead to juvenile delinquency. And that causes the problem with getting involved with the law. Now, as we have progressed into the 80s and 90s, down into the 2000s, you can see places that we were talking about at the very outset here in Nashville, Tennessee, as we've grown into much more of an urban area. And where crime every day, when you cut the television on, you see some mishap going on, some person doing something that is deviant. A deviant is simply defined as going against any of the norms of society, the rules and regulations that guide our behaviors to do correct. They're doing something incorrect and they get caught for it, and now they're a part of the system. So it's very important for us to be able to see how when we had the strong extended family, even fictive kin within communities, where someone that was not really a blood relative could have control over children at an earlier time.
Watching out for them.
Watching out, that's an excellent term, watching out. Even teachers at that time played a primary role in many of, even if it was a low-income, rural or urban area at that time, highly respected. That is broken down within the community today. And so now within the very community where people are living, grandmas and great-grandmas are frightened to say anything to not only their grandchildren, but other children that might be influencing their children. And while at one time they were highly respected, like you were saying, watching out for them, and it was a safe environment, now it's totally unsafe. Yes, so this has been a problem, and it's been pervasive, and it's certainly we should have concern of looking at the family unit as being primary. And I would like to challenge people, because there are many programs out there where, say, like the programs that are out there to try to help youth. There might be YMCA programs. The 100 Black Men program might have a program to reach out to youth, or other specialty programs that might be very present to try to help people, not only within the family, but a substitute. We would think that another institution of religion could understand this pervasive problem and do a lot of outreach to how to try to help children. That was a very strong institution within the African American family as well, that really helped guide children. Even if they came from broken homes, it was something within that structure of religion and the church that was very important, and to help the family, the church with the economics that helped that child to be able to survive and to do well.
Now, Doctor, looking at all of these issues, what would you consider to be a solution? Let's give two or three over the last time that we have here. let's look at some of the solutions. What are some of the possible solutions, and those that people might have thought of, and perhaps some that nobody ever thought of before, you know, some that you might have on your own.
Yes,
Talk
yes.
to it from that
Okay,
perspective.
absolutely. There are some recommendations I think that we could have for improvement. One, I think that institution of the government and politics has to understand the pervasive problems that exist within urban areas, such as Nashville, Tennessee, to be able to target certain areas where crime is very high, to be able to have special programs that can go in and to help people, to understand that there has been that breakdown in the family. There's a breakdown in economics within that particular environment because people are going out trying to possibly have some economic security, whether they are